can't guess what this is? Yes, I know, it looks like a house balancing on a tree, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Stick around and all will be revealed. Also in today's programme, I'll be trying my hand at the ancient craft of bell founding.
Right, come a bit closer, Suggs.
Yeah, I'm not doing your ones at all.
You're too right.
And treading a fine line in the circus ring. But first, I'm heading to the East Coast for some fresh sea air. You are looking at a very important and surprisingly well-preserved piece of British entertainment history. No, not me, you fools. This is the Great Yarmouth roller coaster. Not only is it the oldest one in Britain, it's the oldest one in the whole of Europe. Back in the 1930s, when it first started running, most Brits took their holidays close to home, and Yarmouth was the biggest resort on the East Coast. I've got my own fond memories of this ride because it featured in an early Madness video. House of Fun. But I have to admit I'd forgotten the effect it has on a sensitive stomach. Maybe that bacon sandwich was a mistake. Well, I think once every 25 years is plenty for me. Like the roller coaster itself, Yarmouth has had its fair share of ups and downs in recent years, although it still buzzes with thousands of holidaymakers in the summer season. Slotted in amongst the amusement arcades and chip shops, there are still a few reminders of the good old days. Like this place, the Windmill, which has had many different guises over the years. It was originally built 100 years ago to stage wild animal acts. Then it traded as a cinema, with different seating areas for ladies and gents. They didn't want any funny business if the films got too boring. It was then a theatre, a concert hall, an adventure playground, a waxworks, and today it's a crazy golf course. But it's a bit shut, but that's good, because I'm feeling a bit under par. Ha ha! The Windmill has had to adapt in order to survive, but tucked away just behind the seafront, there's another Edwardian building which is still being used for its original purpose. I don't know about you, but when I think of a circus, I immediately picture a big top. But in the early days, many shows were staged in permanent or semi-permanent buildings like this one instead. And the Hippodrome, built in 1903, was one of the finest anywhere in the land. Today, it's the only purpose-built circus building which still does what it says on the tin. That's thanks to this man, Peter J.
Hello, mate.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to Yarmouth.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Come on.
Yeah. Well, this is fabulous, Peter.
Fantastic. This is all that's left of the original plasterwork. Originally, the whole building was like this, and the panels, they're not actually plastered, they're actually tooled leather. It's incredible stuff. And
is this the main entrance here?
This is the main entrance that people went in, and it was very much a pecking order in those days where the posh people would come and pay, and these paid desks, and then the hoi polloi, the musicians of the world, were made to come down the separate entrance, and it's down the side here.
So this is where the poorer clientele would be?
Yeah, this is the entrance to the cheap seats. They've got their own separate pay box here, so hoi polloi would play there. I mean, maybe, I don't know, sixpence or threepence or whatever it was.
Two musicians' concessions there,
yeah, can we get a special deal? I mean, and then they've got stairs.
Pete is actually a bit of a showbiz survivor himself. In the 60s, he toured with his own band of Jaywalkers before he came home to Yarmouth to run the family entertainment empire. Obviously, only a man with an innate love of circus would take on a project like this.
No, it wasn't like that at all. I mean, literally bought the building in '79, and having bought it, I mean, originally I thought we'd maybe turn it into a disco or even a circular bowling alley, believe it or not. I decided to have a go at circus. It's something I never liked. I've been to see him as a kid and never enjoyed it. I was always a jazz fan and then into rock and roll. It didn't sort of really fit with me at all, but now it's taken over my whole life, and I spend my whole life looking at videos of circus artists from all over the world.
And what changed your mind there?
Well, I think it was trying to make something different with it, trying to bring up to date with modern music, modern lighting, making it very, very fast, and trying to find funny clowns, which is one of the hardest things in the world to find.
Today, the circus is quiet, but in the summer, it's a very different story. Top performers travel from around the world to perform at the Hippodrome. You may have seen acts like this before, but wait till you see the finale. The Hippodrome Water Spectacular is what makes this place really special. At the end of every show, the stage is flooded with around 177,000 gallons of water. I hope they're not on a metre. No need for wellies today, but I'm not going to turn up the chance of honing my circus skills. There must be something I can try my hand at. Well, that was great, that really was. Oh, bravo. But do you think there's anything that Ovi could show me that's slightly less, how could I put it, physical?
I think we've got something that just might be right up your street.
Over the years, some legendary names have stepped into the Hippodrome ring to strut their stuff. Lily Langtry, Charlie Chaplin, even Houdini, although he did try and wriggle out of his contract. And now it's time to add a new name to that illustrious list. Prepare to be astounded. OK, Ovi, I'm not great with heights, I'm telling you now, but just take me through the basics. Yeah, very good. Well, excellent. I think I'll give that a go. Is that better? Is it the chance of rain, is there? Or does this actually break your fall a little?
Yes.
Yeah? I see, OK. Can you give me a hand? I don't know if I've got the appropriate footwear, but I don't think it can be too hard. OK. Away with chocks. Here. I know you did. But it's... one more time. One more time, we'll do this. Right. OK. Your life depends on it. Below you is Niagara Falls. Damn it. Oh, he's dead then. Not as easy as it looks, is it, Obi? No. So, maybe I should have one more go. Oh, ye of little faith. I tell you, a man of enormous talents. The sensational, the superb, the death-defying, 18 inches above the ground. Not even a wobble. They've told me I'm going to get £2 if I get to the end. Cheers, mate, that was great. The Hippodrome really is a national treasure, the circus equivalent of the Royal Albert Hall. And if Peter ever wants to book my high-wire act, all he has to do is pick up the phone and give me a bell. Talking of which... Before the advent of heavy industry and traffic noise, it was London's church bells that dominated the soundtrack of this great city. There were bells for church, funerals, executions. You name it, there was probably a bell for it. Many of London's best-known bells, including some of the ones in St Paul's and Westminster Abbey, not to mention Big Ben himself, were all cast at the same London foundry, at Whitechapel in the East End. I'll be paying them a visit later, but first I have a spot of detective work to do, and my investigation starts with a well-known tune. Some of London's most famous chimes are celebrated in the ancient nursery rhyme Oranges and Lemons, which, in case you've forgotten, goes something like this. Take it away, maestro. The Oranges and Lemons rhyme was probably first written in the 17th century, and it takes you on a musical tour of 6 London churches and their famous chimes. All the original bells featured in the rhyme were cast at the Whitechapel foundry, but what's become of them since? My first stop is St Clement Danes in the Strand. And some people say this is the very church that's mentioned in the first line of the rhyme. Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St Clement's. Legend has it that cargoes from the ships moored down there on the Thames were carried to the churchyard here, and a toll was paid to the church wardens of oranges and lemons. But enough of the fruit, what became of the bells? Unfortunately, St Clement Danes was badly bombed in the war. The outside walls still bear the shrapnel scars from that fateful night. During the raid, all the original bells that inspired the rhyme were lost. But there is one survivor still hanging on in the church tower here. More about that later, after I've paid a visit to the other churches in the Oranges and Lemons rhyme. This is all that remains of the original St Martin's, the second church in the rhyme. It's just round the corner from Pudding Lane, where the Great Fire began, so no prizes for guessing what happened to the rest of it. And this was another victim of the fire, St Sepulchre without Newgate. This was where the bells of the Old Bailey once rang to summon prisoners to their execution. There are a couple of other churches further east at Shoreditch and Stepney. They have ancient bells, but not ones which could have featured in the rhyme. Which just leaves this place, St Mary le Bow in Cheapside. The ancient bells that hung here were the ones that wrapped up the rhyme and also persuaded Dick Whittington to turn again. But they were destroyed in the war and only replaced after a fundraising effort by this lot. And that's nearly the end of my musical mystery tour. But hang on, what's that noise I hear? Summoned by bells. Well, one of them at least. I'm heading back to St Clement Danes where my journey began. Because like I said earlier, there was one bell which survived the wartime bombing raid. And this is it, the 16th century Sanctus Bell.
The Sanctus Bell survived the firebombing as it was much, much higher up in the tower. It was in fact in the steeple on the top and wasn't hung with the rest of the bells. Therefore the fire wasn't quite so intense, therefore the bell actually survived and wasn't destroyed as the other 10 bells were.
I'd hoped to find more than this solitary chimer, but this is better than nothing. And although it didn't actually feature in the Oranges and Lemons rhyme, at least it shared a tower with the bells that did. Which means that although it didn't play the tune, it probably could hum it. Coming up next, the village that time forgot. I've been investigating what became of some of London's most famous bells, and as I've discovered, many of them were made at the same foundry here in the East End. This firm have been making bells in Whitechapel since 1570, making it one of the country's oldest manufacturing businesses. They moved to these premises 100 years later, when master founder Thomas Lester took over the building. The building started life as a coaching inn called the Artichoke, but for the past 300 years or more, its business has been bells, and you don't have to look far for the proof. These impressive beasts are almost as old as the building itself. I'm hoping to try my hand at making something like this, but first, suitably attired in this season's must-have outfit for the fashionable bell founder, I'm catching up with Alan Hughes, because his family have owned this place for the last 100 years.
Wow, Alan, this is a place, yes. So, how much would this process have changed in the last 400 odd years?
Well, not a lot, really.
No.
I mean, you've got electric cranes, you've got electric lighting, you've got oil-fired furnaces. The principle of making moulds from a mixture of sand, clay, goat's hair, horse manure and water, that hasn't changed in 1,000 years.
Extraordinary. And here they very are, the ingredients.
This is the stuff, yeah.
Excellent.
And that's the mix. Be my guest.
Oh, look, go on, why not, yeah.
Horse manure? Is that why bells go dung?
And you've made some rather famous bells in here over the years.
Well, we have. The largest we've ever made, of course, is Big Ben, and I think most have heard of that. And the moulding gauge for Big Ben is the largest of the three that hangs on the end wall. 250 years ago, we cast a bell for America that became known as the Liberty Bell.
The two most famous bells in the world.
Well, yes, that's right. And then things like the bells of Canterbury Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, so on, cast here.
A fair history.
I've got the outfit, and I'm keen to get started. I'm told Big Ben was the heaviest bell ever made here, weighing in at an impressive 13.5 tons. I wonder what Bud has got planned for me. Maybe we could go for the record.
I want to make a really big one, like sort of Big Ben size, yeah?
Yeah, well, we've got to start off with the little stuff, man.
Yeah?
So what we'll do, we'll make handbells first.
And bells? Does he know who I am?
I'll start you off.
Yeah.
Yeah? Right, Suggs, what we do, we put a shovel full of sand in. And just sieve it in, just shake it about. That's it. Keep going, man. This gives you a nice coating of
We're
sand.
down to the diamonds and gold there, mate, look.
I'll have that later then. Right, nice shovel of sand.
Does it matter too much of it?
Nah,
Generally
better
is.
than one. That'll do you. Right, spread it all around around your bells.
That's stupid, isn't it?
That is stupid.
Making you laugh.
This is one third of the job.
So that was it, mate?
No, that's not it.
They may not have the scale of the big bells that Whitechapel is famous for, but handbells like these ones we're making have been an important part of the company's output for hundreds of years. And like everything else that goes on here, the method we're using hasn't changed very much in all that time. After another quick change, it's time to cast some metal. This is the fiery heart of the bell business, the foundry itself.
Yeah, it's not heavy. Nice and easy. Careful where you walk. Right, come a bit closer, Suggs. All right, mate.
Having navigated my way through the casting process, I face an anxious wait to see if I've produced any baby bells. The metal takes 20 minutes to cool, so I think I'll pop outside and try and calm my nerves with a spot of campanology.
And the missus asked me if I could bring a bell home we could hang on the front door, so I thought I'd take this one. Avon calling.
Nice and easy. Go on, straight up.
Finally, the moment of truth has arrived. Behaving like a thoroughly modern father-to-be, I've decided to adopt the hands-on approach in the delivery room.
Hold on, there's something in there. It's like Christmas. Hell's bells. We got bells.
Job done.
Fantastic.
After the bells are dusted off, they're taken upstairs for a tune-up. Unlike most of the process I've seen today, this is all rather high-tech.
Well, Alan, here we are. I've got the rough casting of the bell I made with my own hands. But what will be the next bit of the procedure?
Well, the next thing we have to do is to pitch the bell to find out exactly what note. It is a musical instrument, so what note have we got here? And we use this device, tap the bell into a microphone. And there we have A plus 27/100ths of a semitone.
So this then goes on the lathe, gets reduced and indeed polished.
We machine it inside and outside and polish it, and as we remove metal, the note comes down and down until we have the final required pitch.
I've been making tiddlers today, but there are bigger bells taking shape here as well. Maybe next time they'll let me loose on one of those. But in the meantime, I'm quite satisfied with my own modest creation. After a bit of polish, all it needs is for the clapper to be fitted. And another Whitechapel handbell is ready to go into the world and ring.
It's amazing that so much of what makes up the fabric of historic London started its life right here. And centuries later, the same techniques are still being used today.
My ears are still ringing, so I'm heading back to the coast for a bit of peace and quiet.
When I was a kid, everybody used to go on holiday to Butlins. It was most people's idea of a purpose-built seaside holiday village. But before that was even a twinkle in old Billy Butlin's eye, another one was being built here at Thorpeness.
Our story starts in 1907, when a Scottish landowner called Glencairn Stuart Ogilvie inherited a strip of land here on the Suffolk coast. It looks a bit windswept today, the sort of place for a long, moody walk along the beach. But Mr. Ogilvie had a rather different idea of what seaside relaxation should entail, so he decided to build his own fantasy holiday village. And this was the result. It's quiet today, but in the summer it's a bustling holiday centre. And nowhere's busier than the boating lake, which is where I'm heading next for a chat with Mr. Ogilvie's great-grandson Glenn.
Well, family legend has it that my great-grandfather came down into the village in 1911, and all these out here in those days were grazing marshes. And there was a typical East Anglian mist lying over these marshes. And he saw this, and it gave him the inspiration. It looked like a lake, and so he decided to create it. And that's where it came from. It is all man-made, despite its natural look nowadays.
And all the islands are customised to some sort of theme.
Yes. Great-grandfather was friends with J.M. Barrie, and so he gave it a sort of Peter Pan type theme, and that island there is Peter Pan's property. Next door is Wendy's house. You can see the crocodile. There is also Peggotty's house, which of course is Dickens, but I don't quite know where that came from.
He was obviously doing something right, because by the 1930s, Thorpeness was a prime destination for holidaymakers.
Well, this is rather charming. It's a brochure for prospective customers in the 1930s. You know, all boaters, stripy blazers and white flannel trousers. They were the days. Well, I'll tell you what, it wasn't cheap. Bed and breakfast, 8 shillings and 6pence a day. But you'll be reassured to know it will be lit with electric light throughout. Tennis courts. Of course, tennis was all the go in those days. 1930s, that was the last time we won Wimbledon. You could rent the tennis court for 10 and 6 a week. And look at this. You could even send your kids to school here. So basically, you didn't need to leave Thorpeness. You could live and die here.
Mr. Ogilvie loved an architectural folly. A Tudor cottage here, a medieval gatehouse there. The whole village is full of quirky buildings. But this must be the most eye-catching of all. But in fact, this place was designed for function as well as form.
Believe it or not, this extraordinary building used to house the water tank for the village. But in true theatrical style, Ogilvy made it into an attractive home and called it the House in the Clouds. The tower, like most of the buildings in Thorpeness, was once owned by the Ogilvy family. But over the years, most of the properties have passed into private hands. That might have spelt the end for this magical place, but luckily, the new owners seem to have inherited the Ogilvy's appetite for the eccentric. Sylvia Lacombe has been holidaying in Thorpeness since 1969.
Hello.
Hello, Sylvia.
When the House in the Clouds came up for sale, she jumped at the chance to buy it.
What was it that made you first fall in love with this place?
Well, I just don't think anybody could not fall in love with this cosy house. It was the sort of centre of the magic, really, in Thorpeness.
Well, I think we're only at base camp 1. I think there's still a bit of a way to go.
We have, yes.
The trunk of the house has always been residential accommodation, but the top floor used to house a water tank, until Sylvia had it removed when the village switched over to mains water. Today, the loft has become the fanciest room in the house.
Right, this is the tank room.
How fabulous.
We call it the room at the top, in fact, now.
Every young man's dream. This'll do me.
And if you ever have to remove a 28,000-gallon water tank from your loft, here's how you do it.
3 lads from the Mere came and we unbolted it and hauled it out of the double doors here to the ground. And then Hooky Mew, who was the local scrap metal dealer, came and took it away, and he used it for his cutting tank. So, in fact, really, the whole thing cost us nothing.
Why do you feel the village has remained so intact for so long?
We don't want it changed. I know people say, oh, you know, you've got to move with the times. But Thorpeness, we don't have to move with the times. This house is old-fashioned, and that's what people have to accept. This village is old-fashioned.
It may be old-fashioned and slightly eccentric, but Thorpeness is thoroughly charming, just as Mr. Ogilvy planned it all those years ago. Next time on Suggs' Survivors, I'm getting measured for a handmade suit and chasing a 90-year-old war hero through his back garden. Don't worry, he managed to escape.